Yo, what up, Nothing Burgers? Appreciate you guys tuning in. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about Tony Hinchcliffe, who, unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably seen on your newsfeed a little bit recently. The guy made a bunch of horrible jokes, some racist buffoonery. We're going to unpack all of that and more. And we're also going to get into Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez absolutely cooking his ass live on CNN. So, unless you guys, again, have been living under a rock, you probably already saw the Madison Square Garden Trump rally, the Trump rally that he didn't even bother to show up to except for via Skype call, right? They had Hulk Hogan running around and they had this jackwagon. So let me throw him up on screen for you. You guys can take a quick peek. This is Tony Hinchcliffe, and you might be like, who the hell is this guy? I wasn't familiar with him at all before this little shenanigan that he pulled in front of a large MAGA audience. And I'll give you a quick backstory. You guys are no doubt familiar with the Joe Rogan experience, right? The Joe Rogan podcast. Back in the day when it was a humble YouTube broadcast, before it just evolved into the current model of Joe interviewing people one-on-one. He did the show with this guy, Brian Redband. Brian Redband was on the first 250 some odd episodes of the Joe Rogan experience. And then he went on and they replaced him with the young Jamie character who became more of a producer background guy, right? Brian Redband, he starts a new show with this guy, Tony Hinchcliffe, right? And Tony Hinchcliffe, he met because he was the opener for Joe Rogan when Joe Rogan would go on comedy tours. And Joe Rogan had a real tough time finding an opener when he was going on tour because the whole point of having a comedy opener is that it warms people up and it makes you look good as the headliner. So Joe Rogan had to put out a national casting call for somebody who was both shorter and less funny than he was. You know, he had a bunch of mailmen, amateur golfers, some former UFC fighters. Everybody was sending in tapes from all 50 states. Anyway, this is the guy that Joe Rogan decided to go with. Let's hear from him. This is the kind of commentary he had for those folks at the Make America Great Again rally at Madison Square Garden.
A lot going on. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Okay. All right.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm bombing. Uh-oh. Nobody laughed at my horrendous joke. Uh-oh. Oh, I can't even make people laugh when I'm feeding them red meat to a racist crowd. Pretty ridiculous. But let's go ahead and read on. So AOC weighs in on Twitter kind of after words. I think this is 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Because Tony Hinchcliffe starts a bit. Okay, actually, here, that's a lie. So Governor Walz and AOC react to the clip. Here, when you have some a-hole calling Puerto Rico floating garbage, you know that's what they think about you. It's what they think about anyone who makes less money than them. I want to see every Puerto Rican in Philadelphia and reading across this country see this clip, right? So then Tony Hinchcliffe throws a little fit on Twitter. He says, these people have no sense of humor. Wild that a vice presidential candidate would take time out of his busy schedule to analyze a joke taken out of context to make it seem racist. I love Puerto Rico and vacation there. I made fun of everyone. Watch the whole set. I'm a comedian, Tim. Might be time for you to change your tampon. These guys have no jokes. You know, you're always up shit creek without a paddle when you're a comedian and you have to tell everyone you're a comedian because nobody laughed at your freaking jokes. You're not so, oh, hey guys, I'm the mailman. Yeah, we know you're the mailman. You delivered the mail. Oh, hey guys, I'm the burger flipper here. Yeah, we know you're flipping the burgers. If you're a comedian, you should just tell jokes and then people will understand that you're the comedian. But unfortunately, he did such a piss poor job. He's out here, oh, don't cancel me, bro. I'm allowed to say a bunch of stupid shit. I'm a comedian, man. Crazy. AOC weighs in. She says, you're opening for Trump by calling Puerto Rico a floating pile of garbage. 4,000 plus Puerto Ricans died under Trump. This isn't the Comedy Store. You're using your set to boost neo-Nazis like Marjorie Taylor Greene and stripping women's rights into the Stone Age. Your sense of humor doesn't change that. 100%. And the other thing I think everybody should be reminded, I know AOC hasn't forgotten. I know a lot of people who may see this, nobody's going to see this. But if a lot of people saw this, a lot of people would remember that there was a devastating hurricane during the Trump presidency that took out all kinds of Puerto Rico, all kinds of damage on Puerto Rico, right? It was massive. And what did we see from Donald Trump? We saw nothing but quick photo ops. Do you guys remember the horrendous video of the desperate people in Puerto Rico, which, by the way, is an American territory, right? We're colonizing Puerto Rico to this very day. When you're like, what happened to all of the areas that we were colonizing? We still have them. It's called Puerto Rico, Guam, okay? Hawaii before we made it a state. Okay, we used to have the Philippines, right? People never talk about that. We still have Puerto Rico. We call it like an American protectorate. It's a colony, okay? And Donald Trump throwing paper towels to people like he's shooting baskets is about the best that they got from the country that pretends to protect them. Anyway, pretty crazy. AOC moves on, and let's see, we've got this one over here. She says, can't get over this dude telling someone else to change tampons when he's the one shitting bricks in his Depends after realizing opening for a Trump rally and feeding red meat racism alongside a throng of other bigots to a frothing crowd does unironically make you one of them. 100%. 100% it makes you one of them. And that's the other thing. I wish these fuckers would just admit it, right? They've carved out their safe space in Austin, Texas, right? Tony Hinchcliffe and that Brian Redband guy, I may have gotten my wires crossed a little earlier. They host a show from Joe Rogan's safe space headquarters, the Snowflake store, right? Where he does his own comedy sets where nobody's allowed to bring their phones in. Nobody's allowed to ever say anything about what happens in there because all the sets are dog shit because Joe Rogan's a horrible, horrible comedian. And if you don't trust my analysis on comedy, let's go ahead and hear from the GOAT of comedy. Let's go ahead and hear from one of those guys that, along with Richard Pryor and a handful of others, nobody could really deny is the king of comedy. And that would be George Carlin. Let's hear what Carlin has to say about comedians that just throw red meat to a riled up base.
I would defend to the death his right to do everything he does. The thing that I find unusual, and it's not a criticism so much, but his targets are underdogs. And comedy traditionally has picked on people in power, people who abuse their power. Women and gays and immigrants are kind of, to my way of thinking, underdogs. And, he ought to be careful because he's Jewish. And a lot of the people who want to pick on these kind of groups, the Jews are on that list a little further. You got women, gays, gypsies, blah, 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 and then suddenly you find Jews. And
suddenly Andrew's arrested.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously he should do what he wants. And
why does he get away with it, do you think, then?
Well,
we have never laughed at jokes about the poor.
He's appealing. I think he's appealing largely. I think his core audience are young white males who are threatened by these groups. I think a lot of these guys aren't sure their manhood because that's a problem when you're going in through adolescence. Could I be? I hope I'm not one of them. And the women who assert themselves and are competent are a threat to these men. And so are immigrants in terms of jobs and
so that's why we as an audience then will laugh.
You say we, I don't think you're
no.
But I think you're
collective we.
I think that's what is at the core of that experience that takes place in these arenas. There's a certain a sharing of anger and rage at these targets. And I'm sure Andrew isn't that angry at them. I'm sure he's playing it as a comic.
Right. And that's the excuse of a guy like Tony Hinchcliffe. That's the excuse of a guy like Tim Dillon. That's the excuse of a lot of these guys who have risen to the comedy right as a result of crawling out of Joe Rogan's asshole. Okay. But at the end of the day, you're punching down. And comedy's about punching up. Good comedy is about punching up. So it really does make you an unsympathetic asshole to go out and be racist in front of a crowd of bigots while you're cheerleading a guy who's running for president. Okay, you should be taking shots at the guy that's running for president while you're speaking at his rally. That would be funny. That would be what a ballsy comedian would do. But you guys are tired of hearing me talk, and you're tired of hearing people that weren't in the video's headline talk. Let's hear a little bit from AOC, who came in with another absolute nuke on Tony Hinchcliffe when she had an appearance this morning on CNN. Let's take a listen.
Donald Trump has said disparaging things or uninformed things about Puerto Rico or those around him. What did you think when you first heard it last night?
Under the Trump administration, over 3,000 Puerto Ricans died due to Donald Trump's intentional neglect of the island after one of the worst natural disasters and hurricanes in American history and the history of the entire Western Hemisphere. People in Puerto Rico were left without power for up to a year, over a year. So there's really nothing that's an accident about what was said last night. It is an authentic depiction of how Donald Trump believes and what he thinks about Puerto Rico. He even talked about selling Puerto Rico and brought up the idea of selling Puerto Rico when he was president of the United States. This is what these people believe, and it's not a joke.
How do you square? This is not the first time that
And just to add a little more context there, that's why there is such animosity to towards, excuse me, what comments were delivered from Tony Hinchcliffe right there. Like you can't, and I mean, if you guys need another example of this guy just being a bad comment, this is from the same event here. Let's go ahead and play this clip. Real bright stuff.
All right. Heck yeah. It's a cool black guy with a thing on his head. What the hell is that? A lampshade? Look at this guy. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Gets worse.
I'm just kidding. That's one of my buddies. He had a Halloween party last night. We had fun. We carved watermelons together. It was awesome.
Nobody laughs even at the Trump rally. They're like, "Come on, bro. You don't have any original material. You don't have any thoughts in your own brain that haven't been tried and trotted out 10 million times before. You literally went to the joke bookstore right before you went live on TV and you were like, I know, I'm going to go into the Jim Crow section, Jim Crow jokes, open it up and be like, yep, I got it. Puerto Rico floating pile of garbage, black people carving watermelons instead of pumpkin. Boom. Can't wait to go crush after Hulk Hogan. I mean, come on, guys. This is the state of the Republican Party now. This is the state of the Republican Party, and there's such a money machine behind them. There's such a specific money machine behind them. Really rich assholes like Elon Musk. Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. Okay, he can fund a lot of bullshit on his own, but there are a lot of folks like him, a lot of billionaires, aristocrats that are a lot more private. They will funnel so much money towards these assholes. And what do? They just gin up hateful rhetoric. And it's exactly what Carlin said in that clip. It's really popular with young white males. I'll admit, back in the day, when I was 16 years old, I was working as a late night pizza delivery guy. I was a stoner in high school. I was like probably a junior. I remember the guys that worked at the pizza place, they put me onto Rogan. It felt like something cool. It felt like something, underground. And at that time, it really was. This was long before the Spotify deal. You were watching it on YouTube. He had all these conspiracy theorists on. And if you're a smart guy, you know what you're consuming, at least back then for sure, before he really went off the rails. And I do think there was a point where Joe Rogan consciously pivoted towards the right instead of just playing a more open style of podcast, right? And that's when he really lost me. When he was, when I could at least accept that he was a guy with a right-wing tendency, but he was trying to play it straight and he would have some good conversations with people that had nothing to do with politics, I could at least get on board with it. Sometime around like 2019, I think, 5 years ago, probably, just completely left reality, right? And that's when people who were media literate left his orbit, left his apparatus behind, stopped tuning into all of his shit. And so he just went right off the rails on the crazy train. He just started sucking up to all the worst, most ludicrous assholes on the internet, surrounded by right-wing propagandists, started hanging around Alex Jones again. And everybody around him is just a yes man now. So anyway, ludicrous stuff. This is crazy. This is what we've got now because of the culture war. Anyway, just a short clip. This is the Nothing Burger. Peace out, everybody.